because the first thing we're going to talk about is Deshaun Watson to the Browns, that trade that has happened. I think we have the trade details of it here, Kristen. What is it? 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick. Browns get Watson and a fifth-round pick in 2024. And I do think all that, we've seen Russell Wilson move. We've seen the news on Aaron Rodgers staying put. A lot of talk on these elite quarterbacks. And I think it is partly because some of these questions cannot be answered in the draft this year, right? If there was Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson and maybe even a Mac Jones this year, you might see some teams at the top there being like, all right, we can figure this out, or we can make a trade to get one of those guys. It doesn't seem to be an option this year.
I'm glad you're bringing me. I was going to wait till we got in the draft stuff to talk about that. But one thing I think to keep in mind is Washington at 11, they took the polarizing Carson Wentz, okay? Instead of going, wait, we're at 11. We're going to be able to get one of these quarterbacks for sure.
Sure.
Right? To me, that says something. That does. And it tells you that, yes, it's not the, greatest class we've ever seen, and that there obviously is some teams that have had, I'm not sure about that. I'd rather go with a guy I've seen on film in the NFL and go with that. And I think you're right. That still holds true with the Deshaun Watson conversation there. And it was an interesting development how it all shook out this weekend.
All right, so like I said, we'll get to those quarterback rankings. Maybe those teams are misevaluating. Maybe Chris has seen some things that other NFL teams are missing with some of these draft prospects at the quarterback position. So we'll get to that here in a little bit, but let's start with Deshaun Watson getting that fully guaranteed deal, $230 million over 5 years. That's $80 million more than previously was the high for the guaranteed money on an NFL contract. This is so complicated,
it
right?
is.
Because
it's
honestly, right now,
subject.
as we speak right now, he's still facing 22 civil lawsuits accusing him of many encounters off the field, massages, sexual accusations. So I know there's a handful of Browns fans that don't know what to think right now.
Of course.
That are like, okay, we want to win. We haven't won in a long time. You also want to win the right way.
Yeah.
It's like getting to a Super Bowl and the other team forfeiting. You don't want to win that way. You want to win the right way. And I think there's a lot of fans out there, Browns fans specifically, kind of conflicted with this on what to think about Deshaun Watson coming to their team. Not only just coming to their team, but coming on a massive deal.
Yeah, massive deal, no question. I mean, game-changing deal, game-changing move by the Browns. As we talked about before, when Deshaun Watson is healthy and playing and hitting on all cylinders, he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in football. He is one of those guys that can carry a team through rough times, like we talk about. Game plan's not good, injuries, whatever. But I mean, we're going to be talking about this for a little while because, like you said, the 22 civil suits are still there. And we knew how much of a lightning rod subject this was to begin with anyways. And it's sensitive. And it's not easy even us sitting here talking about it. It's not, because I don't want to seem insensitive to anybody out there. I don't. But the blatant reality is when you're a really awesome football player in the NFL teams find ways to make sure you can play NFL football. And as we talked about all along, I said really for the past year, I knew there was a number of teams in the NFL that were kind of swiping this up to like, this is just a young guy being dumb and stupid and liking girls too much. There's definitely there was that sentiment out there. Again, I'm not saying he's guilty or anything like that, but it is 22. It's a hard time for me to sit here and go, I think 22 people are lying, right? Again, the truth usually lies somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. But Cleveland, I think, felt like they felt comfortable with the person. And again, I don't know what they did or what avenues they exhausted to kind of do the information or the research there. I think one thing they also showed us is they were exhausted of Baker Mayfield to a degree too. And then I think one of the most shocking things to me about this whole thing is the fact that when they kind of said they were going Deshaun Watson, and then Mortensen reported, right, what did he say? They wanted a quarterback who's an adult. And I had kind of said something similar the day before because somebody close to me, the situation, I said a PFT, a similar thing to Florio, along those lines. It was kind of the same thing said to me too, to where, okay, so that happens. I thought for sure if Cleveland didn't get Watson, they had a plan B to get rid of Mayfield. I mean, because you just don't go that far in on Watson. like Baker Mayfield, I think by all accounts, by you and me even viewing him, you would think he'd be a guy that would get a little hurt or pissed off about a situation, right? You would think that, right?
Or he'd be like, if I'm not the guy, then let's move on.
Right. So I was shocked that
you don't believe in me, I don't believe in you, let's move on.
They didn't have a plan B. Their plan B was, oh, shit, Baker's really offended. Okay, we need to go all in more on Deshaun Watson. One, I'll say this. I thought Cleveland was always one of the things that bothered me about last week was I went, man, Deshaun Watson's just picking teams based on where he wants to live. That's that's nice. You can live a nice life, but I don't know if that's going to mean you're going to set yourself up for success. Yeah. I was definitely one with Florio last week and everything going, man, Cleveland is the team. I mean, Cleveland, there's no questions about the team other than let's get a number one receiver in there. Other than that, you go, everything else is pretty freaking good. So that to me is where, I thought it made sense. And, hey, good job by the Texans. I thought Nick Caserio was maybe going to lose trade value with this thing going on and on and on. But it didn't. He maximized what they could fully get here.
Had 4 teams that really, really wanted him.
And 4 teams that really wanted him were willing to look or deal with some of the blowback they were going to have to deal with. And Cleveland's going to have to deal with that. I mean, yeah, you're sorry. That's part of this deal here. We'll see where it goes. And, at some point, like I said to Florio today, I'd like to see Deshaun Watson and Cleveland make some comments, talk, get in front of the mic.
They have to.
At some point it's got to happen. I think that'll go a long way to soothing people over.
They did release, the Browns did, some statements. Jimmy and Dee Haslam, the GM, Andrew Berry, Kevin Stefanski, and they all cited extensive research into Deshaun Watson. But you're right. You got to get up and you got to face the music in front of the camera. And maybe that won't come for Deshaun until all of his legal issues are settled or he's been until that's all over for Deshaun Watson. Yeah. And I do think there needs to be a point where he's got to own up to any mistakes that he's made in the past. And at that point, people are very forgiving, right? Like, we do forgive and we move on.
Definitely.
But we haven't had that moment for Deshaun yet where he's stood up and taken ownership and responsibility for any potential wrongdoing he's done up to this point.
No, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what he does with these 22 civil cases. Because, again, he's trying to maintain his innocence and act like, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm being wrongly accused. Okay, that's fine. I get that. But that also can draw this process out even longer.
Right.
And then, okay, we draw it out even longer, and then who knows, what the NFL stance was going to be. Florio brought up the point today that I thought was interesting where maybe if he doesn't even settle these civil lawsuits, the NFL might be like, you're not allowed in the league until you've settled them. But then if he settled them, it kind of shows guilt to a degree, right? People associated with it. Even though it doesn't mean you're guilty, people just go, well, he's guilty. He wanted to get rid of these situations. So that's a tough look. But I will say in settling the cases, I think at least it just gets the subject matter out of the way a little bit to where now it's like, okay, that's done with. We're still going to talk about the subject, but now we get to evaluate Deshaun Watson and how he handles it and how much was he humbled by it and remorsefulness and all of those things. I think that'll go a long way to the Cleveland fan base, to sue them over. But, again, it's a weird subject.
It is.
And it is weird in the fact that this is where the optics don't look good. The fact that it's the greatest contract in the history of the NFL, and we're giving it to a guy where you go,
22 pending.
He's got an issue,
civil
and that's the guy that gets the greatest contract in the NFL. That's where I understand fans going like, "What? What kind of message does that send?"
Yeah,
and that I understand, and that's an issue for sure.
And you wonder at a certain point, like if the NFL could have stepped up. I think you would almost expect that, like the NFL being like, "We don't want that optics."
I know,
right?
I know that Maybe they will say something to his representation, basically like, listen, you're not getting back in the NFL until the civil suits are done, and then we'll figure out your suspension.
Yeah,
right. But this is, to me, it just, again, with that still out there, the civil suits, it just gives more media attention always. It's just wait. Oh, we didn't talk about it for a week? Oh, today he's meeting with somebody from the civil lawsuits. Oh, let's bring it up again. Let's talk about it again.
Totally.
So that's where it's going to be tough. On the field, though, it's unbelievable. I will say that he fits their offense. Of course, Deshaun Watson fits any offense. Of course, he's a level up as far as quarterback play from Baker Mayfield. I mean, yes, that for sure. Deshaun Watson is one of those rare guys that again, he can beat you with playmaking, but he can beat you in the pocket being surgical too. And that's rare. That really is. He's got that Mahomes, Allen, wait, I can get out of the pocket and make magic happen. But if you keep me in the pocket, fine. I'll throw lasers all over the field and make the right decisions too. And that's why he is a special football player. He's going to help out Cleveland for sure, and just the AFC. Just the max exodus of the NFC players going to the AFC, and I know he's not one of them, but it's just amazing across the league. I mean, the AFC North, the fact that Burrow, Lamar, and Watson are in one division, and then we got another division in the same conference that's got Mahomes, Herbert, Russell Wilson, and Derek Carr's a low man on the totem pole. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable when you really say it out loud.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.